Step 3, you grow hard about what you want to be. Step 4, everybody just do your thing.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. 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 Yeah. Set your affirmations, aspirations. I got shit to do, the aftermath of preparation. Good food, good mood, blood in circulation. One step at a time, yeah, that's how you make it. Set a goal you control and the steps you take them. I try to pick one thought, have some concentration. And if I make a mistake, it's called education. I try to do this every day, call it replication. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day.
Welcome everybody to the first ever Authentic Lawyer Summit. My name is Aaron Bear, this is Dowell Tank, and we are so excited to have you here. We know there are lots more people joining us momentarily. For those of you who are on time, thank you so much for coming. We are incredibly excited about this event. We're trying to do something completely different in the legal industry and really address some systemic problems and things that we think need to be talked about a whole lot more. You're going to hear from some amazing speakers today, and they are going to be talking openly and honestly about the kind of things that are so often only talked about, behind closed doors. And we don't think that's right. We're hearing, and you should have seen the comments that came in from people who registered, whether it was about mental health or about business development or women in law. It was honestly heartbreaking reading some of these things because people are, crying out for more and more of this, and that's what we're here for, to do a little bit of giving back, but more importantly, to drive things forward. And we're so excited to be spending part of our day today with you. All right, so as we wait for a few more people to join us, let's get things kicked off on a positive note here. So let me share my screen. And here's what we're going to do. Many of you may have used this platform, but many of you probably have not. So what I want to do, a little interactivity here, I want you to head to menti.com. You can do this on your phone, on your computer, whatever device you're on, and enter in the code 14957819. So menti.com on your phone, on your computer, whatever you're using here, tablet, and enter in that code 14957819. And again, we know there's lots more people joining. We can see the counter going up on our end. So we're going to use this to get the mood up a little bit, see how everyone's doing today, and also make sure that everyone's here on time for Gavin's talk, and we can't wait for him to kick things off.
And we're also shared the link and the code in the comments, so check the comment section. You'll see that in there as well.
So here's my question for you. I want to get a sense of the room here. How are you feeling today? And this is all anonymous, so you can be honest. And I mean, we're here to talk about mental health. So, honesty is definitely what we want to see here. And you can see some results are coming in, obviously. Lots of people still getting used to the software, but things are trickling in. I'll reveal them in a second. But again, completely anonymous. We have no idea what you're saying, whether you're watching this on LinkedIn, on YouTube, or any of the other links we've got available. So let's get a sense of the room. All right, we've got some people. We've got a few people in that bucket. They're probably not lawyers. Things are great. That wouldn't make sense. Pretty good. That's great to see. So 16 out of 39 so far. Had better days, and the day just started. Is it the weekend yet? I think it's Tuesday. When will the work stop? So probably a decent proxy in a lot of cases for lawyer mental health in general, which could be better. Some good days, but definitely not everybody in this positive bucket. But it's great to see lots of people there. All right, as we get energized, let's do a couple quick brain teasers. Let's see how well those brains are working right now, especially after maybe not enough sleep last night, a long day, daylight savings this weekend, or maybe you're in the US and you are not thrilled to see what happens tonight with the midterm results. All right, so here's the first one for you. I'm just going to leave it like this. It's good enough. So a clerk in a butcher shop stands 5 foot 10 inches and wears size 13 shoes. What does he weigh? Let me know what you think the answer is on Menti using that exact same code as before. Clerk in a butcher shop stands 5 foot 10 inches and wears size 13 shoes. What does he weigh? Again, it's all anonymous, so don't have to worry about being wrong. This is not like law school where we're trying to embarrass you. We've got some people guessing. Give you another 10 seconds or so. Get those answers in. Take your best shot here. I cheated because I looked up all the answers in advance as we were putting this together. All right, meat. Lots of people got meat. That one, I don't think was that obvious. Some people went with the more little answers. We're in the legal profession, so that's what we tend to do. In zero clue, and I don't know. I appreciate that honesty because that's totally fine here. So we'll do the next one. Apparently these are called rebus puzzles, which I learned. So, one of these things, what is the message here that is supposed to be going on? And you can submit that answer over here on Menti. If you're just joining us, if you want to play along here, you got to go to menti.com and enter in the code 149578819, and Dowell's put that up on the screen there. All right, let's see how we're doing. This one's taking some more time here. All right, we'll give you another 15, 20 seconds or so. Take your best shot here. What on earth is this supposed to be? It's a phrase or a thing at least. All right, not too many guesses here. Let's see how we did. Everyone who guessed got it right. I'm guessing a lot of other people. Split pea soup is the answer, apparently. Although I like soup for the soul as a guess. The pea is split there. All right, one last one here. Get us on our toes. What do we think this one is? Another one of these ones. This one is not easy. Gavin, who is in our green room waiting, is looking very pensively as he tries to figure this one out. It is not an easy one. I don't know, Dal, if you actually know the answer or not, or you saw the answer in advance.
I got
All right,
no idea.
we're still
This is a
trying here.
surprise for me.
All right, we'll give everyone another 10 or 15 seconds here to see if they can figure this one out. It is not obvious.
And by the way, for those of you who don't want to type the answer in Menti, you can always leave a comment in the chat. It'll show up as well. So feel free to do that as well. You don't know how to use Menti, use the comments
All right,
as well.
let's see what we did. All right, 2 people got this one right. 4 ones in my life. That was not obvious at all. All right, last one before we kick things off. What is the mental health advice that you wish people would stop giving? Lots of advice is out there. Hopefully it's not what Gavin's about to talk about. But what is that advice that you wish people would stop giving? Because I've certainly gotten plenty of that advice. Let us know what resonates with you. Lots of answers coming in. I know some people are in the comments. Some people are sending us a private message here. Let's start taking a look. Tough it out. Yeah. Tough it out. That is probably the legal profession's favorite, right? Oh, just, it'll get easier, which it often doesn't. Meditation, which, I'm a fan of meditation, but that's not solving what are systemic issues, that's for sure. Yoga, also a fan of yoga, but again, that's not the answer. Take the weekend off. Yes, I'm going to come back on Monday in an even worse position than I would have been otherwise. It's so simple just to, of course, take the weekend off. Do more self-care. Again, all that blame on the individual, of course. Take a break and rest. Yeah, but then you're going to tell me I don't have enough billable hours, and also the work hasn't stopped and it's piling up. Give gift cards. Love it. Yeah, have you tried yoga? Set better boundaries until you get criticized for saying no and told you're not being respectful above you. Take a day off. Just say no. Yeah, but again, what is the implications of saying no? Yeah, meet workplace expectations, but also take care of yourself. Take a hot bath. Interesting. Just be more confident and thick-skinned. Yeah, it's your fault. Definitely your fault here. Yeah, to set boundaries as if law firms respect boundaries. And again, all tying back to incentives. Yeah, just don't work as much. Said to a junior associate. Or yeah, just leave. It's you. It's your problem. You're not good enough. I think we've all heard some of these messages. Be more resilient. Work out. And you don't need to speak to a therapist. Geez, that is terrible advice. And probably a good way to segue into Gavin's talk today. So we are going to get getting started. We are so lucky today to have with us kicking things off Gavin Alexander. He is an attorney and certified corporate well-being specialist, and currently he serves as the wellness director of Jackson Lewis. Before that, he was the first ever fellow of the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court Standing Committee on Lawyer Wellbeing. He's a smart guy. He graduated from Harvard Law School, one of many of our speakers today actually who graduated from Harvard, making me feel good. And he was an associate at Ropes and Gray for about 7 or 8 years. So Gavin, so excited to hear your talk today on law firm well-being, what resources are available, and also to hear some of your story. So take it away, Gavin.
Thank you so much, Aaron, and I am thrilled to be here with all of you today. Thank you for making time. Can anyone see me? My camera may have just stopped. Of course.
Nope, you're perfect. You're good to go.
Okay, great. In that case, great to be here today. Great to see all of you. And I am thrilled that all of you took time out of your busy lives to attend this tremendously important summit where so many incredible people are going to be sharing their authentic selves, their truth, their stories, and tremendous gratitude to start the morning to Aaron and Dawal for setting all of this up. This is a fantastic opportunity, and I'm truly grateful we're having this chance to speak openly, authentically about what we're going through, what we have been through, and what we're doing to try to make things better. So I'm going to share my screen a little bit because I have a few slides to show. So there we go. Let me know, Aaron or Dawal, if the slides are up and visible. Yes, no, someone? Thank you, Elena, for confirming that you could see me. There we go. Looks like the slides are up. Awesome. So I'm going to be talking first, actually, a little bit about my story, who I am and why I'm here and why I do what I do. Then I'll talk a little bit about the history of the lawyer well-being movement, or at least the recent history and how it's expanded. Talk a little bit about what are law firm wellness or well-being officers, because that is the role I now inhabit, and we're starting to see more and more of these officers arise and be appointed to these law firm positions. And then talk a little bit about what resources are available, typically at some larger firms, but if you are at a smaller or medium-sized firm, you might have some of these, and if you don't have some of these, I encourage you to ask for some of these resources, because a lot of them are definitely accessible to smaller or medium-sized organizations as well. And some of them are just free external resources that I'll be highlighting as well. So a little bit about me. That's my dog, Bruja. I am bisexual. I'm white. I am Jewish. I am male. I'm married to a non-binary partner who was assigned male at birth. I'm the wellness director of Jackson Lewis, as you heard. Some of my hobbies. And in terms of my professional achievements, I graduated magna cum laude from Harvard Law School in 2012. I was a corporate associate at Ropes and Gray from 2013 to 2020, because before that I clerked for the Massachusetts Supreme Court for the justice who would go on to become the Chief Justice. I became an inaugural member of the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court Standing Committee on Lawyer Wellbeing, and then became its fellow in 2020. From 2020 to 2022. And then I'm highly involved in DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and well-being efforts for a number of organizations around the country. And I start by sharing all of that, not to brag, but to highlight that even while I was succeeding at every possible level, here's what a little bit of what was going on inside. I felt comfortable enough to come out as bisexual when I was 16. I didn't feel comfortable enough to come out as suffering from depression until I was 30. As a result, although I was pretty darn sure from around age 12 that the symptoms I was experiencing were tied to mental illness, I didn't seek or receive any kind of treatment or mental health support until I was nearly 5 years into my practice as a lawyer. I was petrified that living any sort of paper trail or having received any mental health treatment would place a ceiling on my ambitions, limit my career prospects, or even cause me to lose the support of my family and friends. During my time in law school, I thought about killing myself nearly every day, every exam study period. I genuinely believed if I wasn't at the absolute top of my class, I would be in abject poverty and completely unable to pay the over $200,000 in debt I was accruing. I finished up my 1L year at actually Boston University School of Law with the highest GPA in my section of over 80 students. I transferred to Harvard Law School, graduated in the top 10% of Harvard with a GPA of over 4.0, secured a clerkship, and started at one of the most prestigious firms in the United States or even the world. And again, I share that not to brag, but to illustrate that depression and suicidal ideation can affect even those who show all external signs of success. Following my clerkship, I started at my firm, and I actually really liked my life as a junior associate. Yes, the demands were hard. Yes, the schedule was unpredictable, and the hours were intense. But the work I found interesting, and the people seemed to genuinely care about teaching me how to do the basics of the job. In my third year, that began to change. Suddenly and seemingly without warning, I was a mid-level associate, and I was expected to know how to manage teams, efficiently run projects on my own, and make decisions that could seriously impact multi-billion-dollar transactions. Moreover, the senior associates who supervised me were getting even more advanced, and as they began to drown in the expectations and burdens placed upon them, they took out their increasing stress on me. This was most evident. I struggled to master non-legal skills like management that no one had ever taught me with any real rigor. I started sleeping about 4 hours a night, often in 2-hour spurts because I couldn't stay asleep. I started taking pretty frequent breaks to cry in the middle of the mall where my office was located. Worst of all, I didn't tell anyone about what I was experiencing. I genuinely thought that no one would believe me if I shared what I was going through, and that those who did would see me as a failure. I thought that what I was experiencing was an expected part of the job. I believed that if I sought help, I'd be seen as a weakling who couldn't handle what was needed to succeed as a corporate lawyer. When a headhunter called with a possible exit opportunity to go in-house at a hedge fund, I took the interview. I did not think it went well. They actually thought it did, but I, in my emotionally heightened state, thought it was disastrous. And on my way home from the interview, I stood at a train station feeling the worst I'd ever felt in my life. I was stuck. I'd have to return to the firm, to the frustrating supervisors, to the office where I had absolutely no control over my life, to the 60 to 90-hour work weeks, to all of it. But I couldn't. I couldn't go back, and there was no way out. So if I couldn't go back and I couldn't leave, there was only one option left. As the train approached, I felt my center of gravity shift. I leaned forward. The train's horn sounded. It was almost over. A stranger shouted and grabbed my arm. She broke me out of my reverie. I stopped. I got on the train. I went home. I told my partner what happened, and we agreed that I needed immediate medical treatment. I called my primary care physician, and I began the journey to improve my life. And that journey has led me to the work I'm doing today. So I wanted to start by sharing that's where I come from into this work as an advocate for mental health and well-being for lawyers, and as the wellness director of a law firm. So a little bit of the recent history of the lawyer well-being movement, at least here in the United States. I know a lot of you folks are up in Canada. I'm down here in Boston, in Massachusetts, and share a little bit about what we've been doing down here in the States. In 2016, the Hazelden Betty Ford Foundation released a report primarily authored by Patrick Krill on the prevalence of substance use and other mental health concerns among American attorneys. That report was a sort of first of its kind to really highlight how intense substance use and other mental health concerns were in the lawyer population and how great they were compared to the general population. Following that, a grassroots coalition of branches of the American Bar Association, conferences of chief justices, national other types of legal regulatory bodies banded together to form the National Task Force on Lawyer Wellbeing, and they released a report called The Path to Lawyer Wellbeing, Practical Recommendations for Positive Change. That group then later became a separate 501c3 itself called the Institute for Wellbeing in Law, and they are very going strong today as a think tank and research and advocacy organization for this work. That path to lawyer well-being laid out actual concrete recommendations for all types of stakeholders. These stakeholders included courts, legal regulatory bodies, even insurers, and most importantly for where I am today, they included law firms. They included legal employers of all different types. And some of those recommendations were, I do either or both of form a well-being committee at your firm or hire a full-time wellness officer or well-being officer. That led to the ABA, the American Bar Association, releasing its well-being pledge, of which my firm was one of the original signatories in 2018. And that pledge highlights that those firms and organizations who sign are committing to work to improve well-being and draw attention to and acknowledge the stigma against seeking treatment and seeking help. So that was a huge landmark shift. And then since then, multiple states have formed task forces and standing committees on their well-being and appointed folks like me. And if you want some overall research on this, that last link at the bottom from my old stomping grounds at the Massachusetts Standing Committee on Lawyer Wellbeing has a lot of really great research all in one spot. So what are law firm wellness or well-being officers? I can tell you what I am and how I've seen my role coalesce in the time that I've been here. And I think there are really sort of four categories. I view myself as a strategic leader, a brainstorming partner, a benefits leader, and an internal trainer or coach. And in those capacities, as a strategic leader, I really do collaborate at a high level with the firm's leadership around the overall well-being of the firm's lawyer and staff. I am in regular conversations with pretty much every C-level officer we have and multiple managing principals of different offices, regional coordinators, and the firm's top-level leadership, and talking through what our strategy is, what's working isn't, and how do we create a culture that prioritizes well-being, encourages help-seeking behavior, and breaks down that stigma against talking through these issues. As a brainstorming partner, I collaborate with individuals who are either self-identify as going through struggle or have been identified by third parties as potentially struggling. And then as a benefit leader, I work with our benefits team to promote and create benefits and support offerings so that all members of the Jackson Lewis family and the Jackson Lewis team, I actually don't like using the word family, so the Jackson Lewis team can get the supports they need, and that there is support available at cost accessible levels when they want it and need it. And I do a lot of internal training at all levels of the organization, from first year new hires all the way up through I'll be presenting at our firm's equity partner meeting in a couple weeks. So what are firm provided resources that are available at many legal organizations for lawyers and legal team members to take advantage of? First, your managers and supervisors. They may not seem like it and they may not have the language to communicate it effectively, but a lot of times they really do want you to succeed. Like, if you don't succeed, if you burn out, if you fail, if you submit work product that they're not happy with, and if you wind up leaving, that's a massive blow to them as well. So at the end of the day, the incentives and interests are actually aligned in a pretty large way. So, and I think a lot of people forget that. So even some managers may not be expressing themselves in the most empathetic or thoughtful ways, at the end of the day, they are trying to help us get better, because it works out better for everyone if we get better. So if you are struggling, a good place to start is if you have any sort of positive or trusting relationship with your manager or supervisor, asking them for help and asking them what supports are available is a really great starting option. Most organizations of at least sort of a medium size have something called an employee assistance program, an EAP. And most of those programs provide completely free, confidential coaching and counseling to people who are going through any types of struggles. Issues relating to family and relationship, depression and anxiety, professional stress, grief and loss, alcohol and substance use disorders, any of these issues in many, many organizations, you very well may have a free employee assistance program that is a number or a number you can call, or a website you can go to, and you and possibly even your entire household may be able to get completely free counseling that no one at the firm will know about. And I can tell you, as the wellness director, nothing you say to an employee assistance program counselor will ever get back to anyone at the firm. We have that baked into the contract that they cannot share that information with us. We cannot find out about it. So it really is a confidential resource, even though it is provided by an organization, by your employer. I want anyone who is listening to this to know, if you have an EAP, it is confidential and your employer won't find out what you say. They will find out the number of people who use it in any given period, but even that, they will sort of fudge the numbers if there's any risk of identification. Health insurance. I know a lot of folks up in Canada have a very different system, but here in the United States, many of us have employer-provided health insurance options. And most people think of health insurance as just, they pay your claims when you go to a doctor. A lot of health insurers these days are providing a lot more than that. So basic tip, log on, if you are in an organization with a private insurer, log on to your insurer's website, your insurance portal with your account name, whatever it is, and browse around. There's often some really great material in there, and often like completely free coaching programs, you name it, all different types of health supports that go well beyond just go to doctor, pay the claim. Things like, if you've ever heard of Ginger or Talkspace, these digital virtual therapy platforms, actual psychotherapy platforms, a lot of them are being provided either in network or free by your health insurance companies these days. So definitely log on and check that out. You may have access to mental health treatment you didn't even know you had if you go in and browse around. Leaves of absence is something I wanted to highlight, because I think a lot of people in the legal profession think that the only option is quit, or the only option is abandon law altogether or move to another jurisdiction. Leaves of absence are really valuable. And when I told you earlier about the fact that I made changes in my life, one of the key ones I made was going on a intermittent reduced time medical leave. And what that meant was, under FMLA, the Family and Medical Leave Act here in the United States, a doctor wrote a letter saying I needed to work less and have a bit more time to get care, specifically to get mental health care and treatment, and to be able to go through that treatment and take the time that I needed. And I went on a reduced time schedule, and I stayed on that reduced schedule for 3 years. And during those 3 years, I was unbelievably successful and happy and thriving at my firm. And frankly, the only reason I wound up leaving is because this work really now calls to me of trying to change the profession for the better. But that was a key change that really worked for me. And so I encourage folks to look into whether you can go on some sort of intermittent medical leave if you are experiencing some sort of actual mental health struggle, crisis, diagnosed issue, and are working with a medical provider to support it. Some digital healthcare or digital behavioral health content is out there. A lot of organizations are starting to provide free access to all of their employees on these types of platforms. Go check them out. Honestly, some of them are Calm and Headspace are primarily focused on meditation and sleep, but sleep is really valuable, and a lot of folks don't have tools to help them fall asleep quickly and easily, and those two have tons of really valuable supports on that. Insight Timer also has some great stuff in terms of various schools of meditation, and including some really great stuff intersecting with the legal profession. Unmind is actually doing some research with the legal community and has partnered with Thomson Reuters on some really cool upcoming projects. So these are organizations that know about law in specific as well. Obviously, a lot of employers provide lots of discounts and programs and retirement savings and pregnancy and birthing support programs. Just really dig into your benefits. And now is open enrollment time for a lot of US employers. So really dig into what those benefits are to see if you could be getting more out of your employer, right? Because that's where we as your employer want you to take advantage of the resources we're offering. Because if we pay for these resources and no one utilizes them, we're losing money and no one's getting the benefit of what we're trying to do to support well-being. So use it. And then some quick external resources are the lawyer assistance programs, which I saw come up in the chat. Most provinces and states have a lawyer assistance program of some kind that offers some form of free consultations or referrals for mental health support for members of the legal profession. If you're in the United States and you need to check out what your LAP is, I encourage you to check out that link right there. And then peer support is another wildly underutilized resource. Just being in community with other lawyers who are struggling, who have experienced challenges, who are, like I did earlier in this talk, sharing what they're going through, can be life-changing. I and another member of the speaking program, who you'll hear from later today, Joe Milowick, both of us are some of the leaders of the Lawyers Depression Project, which is an incredible organization that provides completely free peer support meetings for professionals around the world. I think we have around 10 or 12 meetings a month. So log in, create an account, come join us for those meetings if you want to be in community with others who are just talking about what they're going through. Mindfulness, here are some mindfulness resources. You've heard of mindfulness, you've heard of meditation. Two popular free mindfulness resources for lawyers are the Mindfulness in Law Society and Mindfulness for Lawyers by John Kropp. Check out those resources. Mindfulness is a great activity, and there's some real science behind it to confirm that it does help mitigate stress, increase attention, increase memory, you name it. And yes, I'm seeing that they will share these resources with people after the event. So I know I'm speeding through a little of this ending stuff, but you will see these slides after the fact if you want them. And then the just takeaways I have are, if you have questions about what resources are available to you in your particular situation, reach out to your firm's or your employer's wellness officer if you have one, like me, and if not, your HR or benefits team. The worst thing you can do is have what happened to me, not ask for help. I encourage you, seek help if you need it. You may be surprised at what help is out there, and we want you to get better. We want you to thrive. I personally do not want any lawyer to go through what I went through. So that's why I'm doing the work I'm doing today. So the other tips are about EAPs, LAPs, which I mentioned, and some proactive wellness options for those inclined to engage in mindfulness, proactive mental health, and content like that on a day-to-day basis. But those are some resources that are available at many law firms. And as I said, if you don't have any of these resources, go to your leaders and start asking for them. We're all in this together, and we want to see the culture of legal practice change. So thank you for hearing a little bit. Thank you to Aaron for letting me tell my story and be with you authentically here today. I'm grateful for every single one of you and every single person who is in this fight to make the law a more supportive, inclusive, rewarding, and sustainable profession.
Thank you so much, Gavin, for sharing that story, taking the time. Thank you to everyone commenting in the comments and sharing your perspective. Lots of great stuff going on in there. And Gavin, as I'm listening, it's heartbreaking in so many ways hearing you were in that position. And I know just from conversations with so many other people, especially over the last few years, you weren't alone in feeling that way. There's a recent study out of Canada, I think, like the suicidal ideation since they started practicing law is like 25% or something. That was a 7,000 or 6,000 legal professional survey, which is way above average. And so I think you did such an amazing job of not just sharing your story, but also helping people realize there is stuff out there. It's confidential, and there are so many resources. You are not alone. And in fact, that same study I just mentioned, one of the other really heartbreaking things in there was they asked, like, why do people not access EAPs or other things? And they're like, I'm so terrified it's going to get back to my employer, or I'm worried about this and that reputationally. It's holding them back from accessing resources they know they need. And it's so great to hear you reinforce that this is confidential. It truly is. And that at the end of the day, people really do want you to get better. As you said, they may not have the right words to use. They may not be seeming to empathize, but no one wants you to suffer, and you are definitely not alone. Dowell, over to you. We've got a little activity we're going to do now as we move forward here.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Gavin. Thanks a lot. Just for sharing these stories, these ideas to really make a difference. I think we're seeing the comments section blow up with so many people chiming in here with these great suggestions, these great type of support. Everyone has an idea. Everyone has felt this. Everyone has kind of experience this need for better mental health support. And it's wonderful to see these comments come into YouTube, on LinkedIn. We're live streaming on multiple platforms, so keep those comments coming in. One of the things that Gavin did mention is that a sense of community makes a huge difference. Having someone else go through this and being able to talk with them makes a huge difference. And today, I'd like all of us to give that gift to other people. Right? All of us are in a position to help. All of us are in a position to make a difference in the lives of people. So in this short activity, I would like us to go and reach out to some person, one person, and if you got a little bit more time, maybe 2 or 3 people in your life. They could be professional colleagues, they could be a family member, they could be a friend you haven't reached out to in a long time. And actually go out there and check in with it. I'm going to share my screen in just a sec. I'll give you a script you can use. You can either do this on text, you can send an email out, whatever works for you. But we're actually going to, actually take some action right now to extend that supporting hand and make a difference. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's look at one thing we can all do, and hopefully that's going to make a difference. So here it is, and allow. And let me add this to the screen. All right, so here it is. Here's a script you can use right now. Send a text, send a message to someone out there that could really use this. Maybe you haven't reached out to them. Even if you don't think they're in a bad place, just reach out to someone. Get into the habit of reaching out to people. And once you're done, leave a comment in the chat. Just reach out to one person and tell us. And later on, we'll check it and we'll see if they responded back, what their reactions were. But please, take a moment, pull out your phone and do this.
And again, make it authentic. You do not have to use these exact words. This is just a prompt, but I'm going to do this right now. So I'm going to mute myself. I know Dowell's doing the same. Reach out to somebody if you've got time, 2 people.
I'm loving these comments coming in. Mary Rose, great to see you again. It's heartening to have these conversations come up again. Elena, I know we're going to see you later on in the summit, so I'm glad you sent that out. I'm seeing a couple of responses coming for me, including a friend of mine who's actually listening in. He's a lawyer out of Vancouver, just super busy all the time with a million things going on in his life, and he just really appreciated the fact that we're doing this, and I'm reaching out to him, and we've already got a call scheduled for next week, where we're going to talk a lot more, and this is just wonderful. And Aaron is just sharing a CPD CLE form as well for those of us listening in. Wonderful.
So we're going to be on break for the next 5 minutes until Olivia kicks things off at 11:45 Eastern. So feel free to go to the bathroom, grab a drink, or send another one of those messages to someone. If it felt good sending that first one, send a second one, and we'll check back in a little bit on how that went. As Dalil mentioned, I am sharing in the comments a link to there we go. It already was shared, but I'm just going to reshare it here. A CPD CLE form. So in some places, including in Canada, Ontario, BC, Saskatchewan, stuff like that, this is eligible for CPD or CLE. So just fill in that form. That way we can, track attendance, and no one can later say we didn't do our job. The code to use is going to be 2022-11. So 202211. We'll be able to know who joined us live because Google Forms tells us exactly the time that you filled out the form. So if you're watching this later and you later claim it was a live broadcast, that's not going to work unless it's, of course, allowed in your law society. So again, the code is 202211. We'll be starting with Olivia in 4 minutes. So enjoy the break, send another one of those messages, and I'm going to send another one myself.
Aaron, we're having a bit of a hard time listening to you because you are muted, as we
Oh,
said
I
up
had
introduced.
such nice things to say about you, Dal, but it's a shame no one heard them. All right, well, welcome back, and welcome back to me as well, learning to use the mute button in 2022. We've got four amazing short talks coming up by people from very different backgrounds, all who are going to bring really authentic flavor to us here. First up is Olivia Vizicaro. She's a former big law commercial litigator and criminal defense attorney, and she runs the Less Stress Lawyer, which is a boutique life coaching practice for lawyers. She's a certified life coach and works with lawyers who are overwhelmed and just want to live life with less stress and a lot more fulfillment. And how does she do that? Well, she teaches them how to manage their mindset and make themselves and their well-being the top priority. She's also the host of the Less Stress Lawyer podcast. Olivia, the floor is yours, and I am disappearing here.
Thanks so much, Aaron. I'm so excited to be here today and to talk about really the 10 essential steps that people need to follow in order to become a lawyer who's less stressed. That's what I teach my people to do. I teach them how to live lives with less stress and far more fulfillment. And if you follow these top tips, you get yourself there. All right. So we're going to go fast because we've got a lot to cover. I wanted to give you the essentials to really living a life on your terms and creating a life you're obsessed with. So step number one, or tip number one, is that you need to take ownership over your emotional experience. We're not taught this growing up. We're taught to believe that our emotional experience is outside of our control, that it's caused by the circumstances we encounter in our lives, the situations we find ourselves in, other people's behavior, the things that they do and say, and the things that they don't do, and the things that they don't say. And it leaves us feeling like we're living at the effect of our circumstances, feeling very outside of our control of our emotional experience. And what's actually true is that you're in control of how you feel. So this is definitely the most essential step out of everything that I teach. You want to know that your thoughts are what cause your feelings, not circumstances causing your feelings. Your feelings drive all of the action that you take, and your action produces your results, okay? Now, that means that your thoughts produce your results. So it's so important to become aware of what you're thinking. A lot of people find this jarring at first, that they're in control of their emotional experience. It's not caused by the external, but it's the best news ever, because your thoughts aren't true. Facts are true. Thoughts aren't. And you get to control what you think. So you want to become aware of what you think. And if you don't like how it makes you feel, how it makes you show up, and the results that it produces, you want to change your thinking. All right. So you got to become aware and then choose wisely. Tip number two, speaking of results, you always want to be very clear on the result that you are specifically working towards in your life, whether it's a career goal or a personal goal, whatever the case may be. I watch a lot of people speak very vaguely about their goals, about the results that they're aiming for. And when you're not clear on what you're aiming for, it's really hard to work towards it because the path isn't clear. It's very ambiguous. And it's also hard to recognize when you arrive there. So a lot of my clients end up feeling very dissatisfied and unaccomplished, feeling like what they're doing and what they have isn't enough. So you want to be very clear on what you're working towards. You want to make sure it's specific, measurable, objective, and attainable. Okay, that's how to set a great goal. And then you can work it backwards. Once you get very clear on what you're working towards, reverse engineer it. What do you need to do in order to produce the result? How do you need to feel? What positive emotions do you need to feel in order to take positive productive action? And then what do you need to think in order to cultivate those emotions that are really going to fuel you forward? All right, tip number three, always start with gaining awareness. I always teach people to do this. It's the most important part of making any change in your life. If you want to really get to the root cause of what's going on, what problems you're encountering, you have to understand what's causing them in the first place. So you want to devote time in your life to figuring out, what am I thinking? What are the thoughts that are running through my head on a daily basis? How am I feeling? What are the one-word emotions that I'm experiencing today, yesterday, last week? You want to really become aware of what that experience is like for you, using specific words. You also want to become really aware of what your actions are, the actions that you're taking and the ones that you're not taking, and then discover your reasons. So for any of these things, thoughts, feelings, actions, and inactions, you want to explore why you're experiencing any of those things, why you're doing any of those things, and ask yourself, do I like my reasons? You always want to make sure you know and like your reasons for whatever it is you're experiencing. Okay, so you want to spend time. I like to do this every day. You can spend 2, 3, 5 minutes just saying, what am I thinking about today? How am I feeling? What did I do that maybe didn't serve me? So start by creating awareness. Tip number 4, become an expert at discerning the difference between what you can't control and what you can control, and focus only on the latter. This is such a game changer for people. You will live such a more satisfying, enjoyable life if you don't expend any energy trying to change things that are outside of your control. So when you feel frustrated, when you feel discouraged, when you feel exasperated, check in with yourself and ask, do you feel, or are you focused on something that you cannot control, that's outside of your control? If you are focusing on something outside of your control, like what other people do, you want to take a step back and refocus your energy. What is it that you can control, and spend your time there? Tip number 5, I work with a lot of people pleasers who constantly martyr themselves, constantly self-sacrifice. If that's you, I want to invite you to start putting yourself first. Now, I understand that that is not the most comfortable thing for people to do, okay? So here's a little tip that I like to offer you. When you are presented with a choice between feeling guilty or feeling resentful, choose guilt. Choose to feel guilty on purpose and prioritize yourself and what you want instead of people pleasing and taking care of other people's needs before your own. All right. If there's discomfort both ways, guilt and resentment, choose the guilt path because it gets you ultimately doing what you want to do. The other one doesn't. Tip number 6, practice constraint. This is such a game changer for people. Overwhelm comes from being over capacity. It's the result of trying to do too much in too little time, okay? So what you want to do is cut out anything that's not essential, all right? Ways that I practice constraint is I don't listen to a ton of podcasts. I pick 2, and those are the only ones I listen to. I just allow myself to feel the FOMO. I only offer one service, and it makes my business and my pricing really easy. So that's a way to practice constraint. If you're practicing criminal defense, maybe only do a few services rather than trying to do everything from a misdemeanor to a felony. If you practice family law, how can you constrain there? Really eliminate anything that's not essential and lessen your options. It will make your life more streamlined. Another way to make your life streamlined is to make decisions ahead of time. So we spend so much mental energy remaking the same decisions day to day to day. What am I going to eat for dinner? When am I going to stop working? Do I work on the weekends? When do I take calls? When do I respond to people? When do I get to my email? Things like that. Spend some time thinking about each week and make decisions one time and just honor them going forward. It will really streamline your life and save that precious mental energy of yours for what's most important. All right, tip number 8. When it comes to time management, I teach on this all the time. And I teach a 3-step process that you need to control your calendar, or better yet, reclaim control of it. You need to plan your schedule accurately, and then you need to honor your plan, the most uncomfortable part. But the tip that's the easiest to implement right now is to make sure that you're always getting your math right. So list out what you need to do in a given day, figure out how much available time you have to do it between humaning and maybe meetings and whatnot, and then make sure the math matches. This is a surefire way to guard against overwhelm. Stop trying to fit 10 hours worth of work into a 5-hour time period. You'll always feel behind if you do that. So make sure you're getting the math right. Tip number 9, I think this one's my favorite. You need to take action in spite of and despite your discomfort. Any result that you have, that you want to have in your life that you don't yet have in your life, is because you're unwilling to feel a feeling. You can create absolutely any result if you're willing to feel uncomfortable, if you're willing to feel confused and work through it, if you're willing to feel overwhelmed and work through it, if you're willing to feel unprepared or maybe a little insecure and work through it, uncertain, embarrassed, exposed, all of those emotions, okay? Everything you want is on the other side of them. So it's like they come along for the ride, but we're not going to let them drive the car. They're just going to ride shotgun. So you want to feel your negative feelings, even though it might make you feel a little nauseous. It might make you want to vom. That's okay. You'll survive them. You just want to gag and go through that discomfort. Okay. And last but not least, this is such a game changer. You want to make sure you're evaluating what you do on a weekly basis. This will keep you so intentional and in control and in a constant state of improvement. So you want to be acting, auditing, adapting, and the evaluation is where you audit what you've done. And you do this very simple process by answering 3 questions. What worked this week? And you always start there because our brains love to go to the negative, and you're not going to do that. You're going to build yourself up first, celebrate what worked. Then from curiosity, not from judgment and beating yourself up, you're going to move to what didn't work. All right. Get really specific about it, get clear, understand why it didn't work, what went wrong. And then you're going to move into what are you going to do differently and plan for the changes that you'll make so that next week you're making these consistent 1% improvements on a day-to-day basis. All right. Yes, you're in control of your emotions. I love that comment. All right. Those are the 10 simple tips to living a life as a less stressed lawyer. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them if we have time. If not, it was amazing to speak with you guys today.
So much, Olivia, for sharing there. And I think, as you said, there is so much within our own control. I think for me, that was one of the biggest things I went through. When I started going through therapy and dealing with the anxiety I was feeling from my job, was realizing, okay, yep, there are systemic issues going on here, but there's also a piece I need to work on, and all that about thoughts and feelings and results. Like it's so true. And again, we're not trying to diminish one bit, the reality of the systemic issues. We're going to talk about that a lot more. But like you said, there are things we can do to make it a little bit easier. And thank you so much for joining us. All right, we were originally going to go with Ben Carpenter next, who's dealing with some of these systemic issues from the in-house perspective, but he's having a couple camera issues right now. But the nice thing is our next speakers are here, so we're going to flip the order a bit, and we're going to go with Julian Serafian. So there we go. So many of you may know Julian. If not, you should. He, like Gavin, went to Harvard, making me feel pretty impressive about myself. He worked in big law, like Gavin did, ex-big law lawyer. He's been very open about his mental health struggles, featured all over the place. And like me and so many others here, really doing his best to actually drive change, in part by talking openly about things and being supportive, whether it's on Discord, whether it's in other communities he's in. Right now, he's a lawyer for creators. He's a mental health advocate, and he is a content creator and a lawyer and an attorney whose name you should know. So Julian, the floor is yours. Over to you.
Aaron, thank you so much. And thank you for putting on this amazing conference. I think that post-pandemic, this is the exact type of energy that lawyers need. We need to be reminded that we are human beings. We need to be reminded that we are not just machines to bill hours. And we need to be ourselves, especially around each other, to inspire each other to make our profession more and more human. Because as I'll discuss in a bit, our profession, as I'm sure you guys are all aware, is undergoing one of the largest mental health crises ever. And of any profession, law has it arguably the worst. So I want to talk today about being an advocate. Like Aaron said, my name is Julian Serafian. I graduated Harvard Law School in 2018. I worked at a big law firm for a couple of years, and I quit to focus on my mental health a little over a year ago. Since then, I've advocated for mental health anywhere that I could, trying to raise awareness about my own mental health story and also the challenges that lawyers face in the legal profession, pretty much anywhere, primarily on social media, because that's where people are paying attention. I think that's where a lot of us have probably connected via LinkedIn or other platforms. And I recently launched my own law firm to represent content creators and social media influencers. But today I want to talk to you guys about what it really means to be an advocate, because being a lawyer, I think it's very easy to fall into the habits of day in and day out, doing the grind, doing the work, working for clients, doing everything we can, and losing sight of the bigger picture of maybe why some of us went to law school like myself, which is the passion and the fire of fighting on behalf of somebody else and fighting for their interests. I went to law school primarily to be and to become an advocate. The research and the diligence and the movies, those are all cool. But the idea of fighting for somebody else's interests who are underrepresented, that's the thing that drove me to go to law school, and that I think drives many of us to go to law school, because being an attorney, of course, is a lot of power. It's a lot of responsibility. And being able to have that platform to fight for somebody else, it's a privilege in and of itself. So let's fast forward. I do law school and I end up in big law. And those of you who have been in big law, I don't need to tell you what it's like. You're well aware. Those who have not experienced the joy and privilege let me tell you, it's probably exactly what you have heard. Lots of hours, lots of money, lots of pressure, moving targets and assignments. It feels like your already fried attention span in our digital age is getting injected with ADHD, especially as a transactional attorney when you have like 80 clients and all of them are doing different things. Late night dinners at the office, all of that. The pandemic hits and things got darker for everybody. Clients became even more demanding because everyone felt like they had no control over their lives, naturally, because of the pandemic. And clients knew that the one thing they could control was their legal teams who worked in big law, because in big law, of course, you do whatever the client wants. You dance when the client says dance. And so we had no choice but to give in to sometimes unreasonable requests and work even harder. 60 to 70-hour weeks became 80 to 90-hour weeks. There were no boundaries anymore between work and home, as I'm sure you guys are well aware. Everything was remote, which of course is fun working in your PJs, but not fun when you're isolated from all of your employees and staff and teammates and even clients for 9 months on end. So fast forward, and we're in the middle of the pandemic. Most of my friends in big law had already quit by this point. The entire industry, especially the junior associate level where I was at the time, was burnt out, desolate, desperate for change, but at the same time hopeless that it was going to happen. And so many had already left. They'd gone in-house, they'd gone to government, or they had outright quit and just said, let me figure it out. Meanwhile, I feel like my life is falling apart. I had done everything that I could to change the way that I felt, and I felt very, very miserable. I had tried exercising, I tried watching TV, I had tried picking up new hobbies like cooking, cleaning, anything under the sun you can imagine, and I was still miserable. And I was like, you know what? This is out of my control now. And as much as I don't want to admit that maybe there may be some mental health issues going on here, because of course the stigma runs very deep, let me go into mental health services and see what happens. So I do, and I get the diagnosis of severe anxiety and mild depression. Like, okay, a lot of my life makes sense at this moment, because prior to that, I had had a lot of other issues physically, where I felt like I had to throw up for years in my 20s. I had stomach issues when I was in high school. And of course, during the pandemic, all of those things culminated in basically me being depressed. So I'm working on mental health. Things are going okay, but I need more time and resources, and the job is taking all of it from me. Naturally, I go part-time. It's not enough. So I decide, after months and months of thinking about it, that, you know what, at this point in my life, it makes sense right now to leave this behind, at least temporarily, to focus on mental health, because I see so much progress that I am making on myself and being fulfilled in life. And what am I getting from the job right now? Well, for me at the time, it was money, it was experience, it was the career points. Personally, I was okay leaving that on pause for a while I did what was more important to me, which was work on myself. Because what's the point of all of the money and the prestige and the pedigree if you're miserable? In my opinion, it's not worth it. And I think when you're in the industry, there's definitely a bubble effect where it's all that anyone cares about, and it's easy to fall into that trap. But I took a leap and I quit. 4 days after I quit my job, I posted on LinkedIn about my mental health story, the ups and the downs. Valedictorian from high school, 4.0 student at Berkeley, Harvard Law School, but also all the struggles that came with that academic success and prowess. And the post goes viral. 2 million people see it. Hundreds of people reach out to me, telling me how they've never felt more seen by a post before. They think that my post most likely saved lives. They are so grateful that people are speaking up in the Ivy League circle, because so often people in that genre of schools and universities have this idea of perfection that leads them to never saying anything. Lawyers, paralegals, staff, doctors, accountants, bankers, all across the service industries, people came out and talked to me very, very vulnerably about their own struggles, their own stories. And I'm sitting here and I see, for one of the first times in my legal career, the very real impact that I had had by advocating for something that I believed in. And I'll say right here that this was not in the context of me being an attorney. It was in the context of me using my voice and speaking out about something, of course, today on social media. So I run with this for a while, and I decide to advocate anywhere that I could for mental health's importance and talk about my story and shout it from the proverbial rooftops as you could. I end up on TikTok, I end up on Instagram, and I go viral time and time again, telling my mental health story, talking about the downsides of success, the dangers of working yourself to the bone. And 6 months go by, I'm giving career development advice. I'm talking about the legal profession. I'm talking about pop culture and the law. And I become a content creator on the internet, making TikTok videos, making YouTube videos, making LinkedIn posts and Instagram posts. And I very quickly see that in the content creation economy, creators are being taken advantage of left and right. And this is where I want to pause and talk a little bit about the importance of what it means to be an advocate. Because I think that even though I've turned the page, so to speak, from big law and now represent content creators and social media influencers in my practice of law, and I advocate for their interests, the thing that drove me to advocate on social media for mental health changes in our infrastructure, in our schools, to do a TEDx talk and just speak about my own mental health struggles in ways that make me very uncomfortable and bring me a lot of pain every single time I relive them, is that when you're advocating for somebody else, what you have to really remember and what you really need to do if you want to be an effective advocate is you need to put yourself in their shoes and really feel the pain that they are feeling. You need to close your eyes and you need to imagine what it is like to live with their life and be in the situation that they are in and feel that struggle. And you need to take that energy and channel it into the advocacy work and into the platform that you have, whether it's a legal platform or a social media presence, or even just using your own voice in the public sphere. You need to channel that energy and use it to fight for their interests and fight on their behalves when they cannot do so on their own. That is the thing that drove me to advocate for all of these things when people in big law could not speak out, but I could because I was not in the industry any longer. When staff and paralegals texted me and told me they're so grateful that I'm speaking up because as staff, they can't speak up. It's their pain and it is their life emotive state that I carried with me in my advocacy work that I think contributed in part to me being such an effective advocate. Of course, now I represent content creators and social media influencers, and who knows that industry better than a creator myself. So this part for me is a little bit easier, representing creators' interests on the brand deal side, protecting them against defamation suits against big brands that want to silence them, helping counsel them on their business or their creative side for their content. These are things that I learned secondhand in the process of becoming a creator. So it's a lot easier for me to represent them and advocate for them as a creator and as a lawyer because I know firsthand what it is like. And so when all is said and done, I want you guys to remember that being a lawyer so often is conflated with being an advocate. They are distinct. You don't need to be a lawyer to be an advocate. You don't need to advocate to be a lawyer, to be very clear. But in our profession that hinges on the representation of other people and hinges on your ability to fight for the interests of your clients, I think it's ever more urgent and important for us to remember the mission of attorneys and the legal profession, which is to focus on what they are going through and to channel that into the energy that you use to fight their battles, not your battles, but their battles. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for Julian. The passion is just like radiating. I feel like we're in the same room here as I hear you tell that story. And I can see in the comments too. Amazing work there. And Gavin sharing something, I guess, as Ashley has called it, a fun, not fun fact. At least 3 current Harvard Law students have died by suicide in the last 5 years. And these are some of the smartest people, in the country, feeling like
I knew one of them too. It happened when I was there. One of them.
Yeah, it is a tragedy. And again, I think, going back to Gavin's presentation earlier, you're not alone in terms of the resources that are out there, whether you're at a firm, in a law school, there's stuff out there. And to Olivia's point, there's things we can do to try to make things better for ourselves. But like you mentioned, Julian, sometimes you're just in an environment that systemically is problematic. And that's what we're here to do today. We're going to do a challenge later today to try to, start some systemic change and then do a lot more post-summit. I just want to say thanks again, Julian, for joining us. And I'm excited for the next speaker. And if you're not following Julian, follow along. And Julian, feel free to post in the comments, sort of different places.
Thank you. Aaron, thank you so much for putting this on. Take care.
Amazing. All right. So next up is going to be Ben Carpenter. He's having some potential camera issues. We'll see if it works here or not. We've been trying behind the scenes. I'll let Dowell figure this out, the visual in the meantime. So Ben's going to take a bit of a different perspective here as his loading thing shows up there. Definitely not working here right now, but that's okay. You'll get to look at my pretty face maybe as Ben talks, and it's a tragedy. Ben is an in-house counsel. He's a senior VP and deputy general counsel at the U.S. Bank. His team supports the consumer and small business banking division at U.S. Bank, and he's the executive sponsor of the U.S. Bank Law Division's well-being program, and he's launched an effort to promote well-being as a shared value among clients and outside counsel. And that is the key, because I think there is so much going on where we believe, oh, we have to do these things, the clients want it. And I'm so excited, Ben, hopefully your audio is working, to hear your perspective and also what you did as outside counsel. So Ben, take it away from here. If we can, and if your audio is not going to work, we'll pivot in a second and come back to you. Ben, are you able to talk or not quite yet? Not quite yet, it looks like. All right, Kara, we'll come to you. Ben, we'll get you back on here in a second, and we'll come back there. All right, so the nice thing is our speakers are ready. We'll hear from Ben shortly. Kara is up. Kara is fantastic. I promised Kara probably like 10 months ago we were going to do something soon, and then it didn't happen. But when I reached out to her about this, she was so excited to do it. She is the founder and CEO of the Practice Lab. She is a mental health educator, a registered psychotherapist, and a former practicing corporate and securities lawyer. So she knows all about what it's like to be an attorney or a lawyer, but she brings this really unique angle now as somebody who is licensed on the mental health side and dealing with, or getting the privilege, I guess, should say, to work with lawyers and attorneys on a regular basis. She works at the intersection of mental health and performance and specializes in the complicated ways that mental health drives performance and how it shows up at work. Kara, take it away from here. I'm so excited to hear your talk today.
Thanks so much, Aaron, and hi, everyone. I'd like to take our time today to talk about an experience I had back in April 2020 that I'm still trying to understand, and that I think is critical to renegotiating how we are showing up at work. I was walking with my kids. I had a 3-month-old and a 3-year-old, and I was pushing the stroller down the street. It was eerily quiet, and I could feel my heart beating, and I noticed my hands were sweaty and my jaw was tight, and all of a sudden it dawned on me. I was afraid. I was afraid for all of the reasons that are familiar and perhaps now forgotten. I had family on the front line. I was relying on community members to show up in ways that put them in danger. My son would get febrile seizures when he got sick, and I wasn't sure about germs. My husband was working all the time, and it was my job to keep our family and our home running, and I was withering. As I walked down that street, I felt anxious, I felt alone, and I felt profoundly sad. And then I did the thing that I'm still thinking about, the thing that I see high-performing people, so many of us, do again and again in the face of pain. I blamed myself. I took accountability without perspective, empathy, and compassion, and I decided I needed to fix it. You tell me if this sounds familiar. It went something like this in my head. Kara, if you're not happy, if you don't feel good, whose fault is that? You know what you need to do? For goodness sake, you're a therapist. You need to try and sleep when the baby's sleeping. You need to keep your son safe, but you need to exercise and think about what you're eating. You need to increase your impact. You need to get back to therapy. You need to find a therapist. You need to engage with your clients more meaningfully. You, Kara, need to outperform this pain. Outperform this pain. This is what we do. In my work, as a registered psychotherapist, a former lawyer, a CEO, I see people, including myself, time and time again, trying to find safety and comfort, trying to feel valuable by meeting and exceeding external expectations. As high achievers, we show up to work and life needing to be solely accountable and responsible in order to feel valuable and safe. And so to feel safe, to feel better, I told myself I need to keep performing. I need to dig deeper. I need to do more. And I know you know this story, and I know you know the fallout. It started at 5 a.m., then at 4 a.m. Then I wouldn't sleep. Then I was doing all the things I possibly could. I was up all night, and I noticed. The more I pushed myself, the worse I felt, the harder I pushed. I was expressing my care the way I knew best through performance, and it was making me unwell. As Julian was talking, I kept thinking to myself, accountability. Without perspective, empathy, and compassion is just another name for punishment. You see, at the heart of performance is a paradox. When we seek safety and connection in performance, a landscape that is full of uncertainty and outside of our control, inherently we are never enough. We will never be adequate. We will never feel safe. The qualities that keep us succeeding externally leave us feeling anxious, inadequate, alone, and disconnected from what matters internally. My colleagues, safety does not come from avoiding punishment. Safety comes from knowing that no matter what you do, you are enough, you are valuable, and you matter. And so to you, and as a reminder, a gentle reminder to myself, your dignity is not dependent upon what you do. What does this mean? It means at work and beyond, we need to rewire our relationship to work to actively balance our own and each other's sense of responsibility and accountability with an equivalently compelling sense of compassion, perspective, and empathy. Here's what it looks like. As individuals, I want you to take any warmth you are feeling towards me, and I invite you to turn it towards yourself. I hope you felt my heart with your heart, and that as you are bringing me to mind, inside you are feeling warmth and care. You deserve that warmth and that care. The next time you get an email that makes you feel small, you sent a document that's confidential to the wrong person, you let someone down, you feel guilty about picking whatever choice you make, work or not work. Feel this feeling. Do not try and outperform your pain. Be the soft place in your life that you deserve to land. And for leaders, we need to emphasize perspective, compassion, and empathy. We already got accountability down. We need you to remind us about our humanity. Here are 4 questions that help. 1, how are you really? 2, how are your loved ones? Really? 3, what do you need? What do you need from me? How can I help you? And lastly, who or what can I protect you from? You know, the idea that I alone was accountable for and could remedy the context that left me feeling so broken that day. Walking alone on that quiet street is at best inaccurate, at worst delusional. If I could go back to that person, if I could go back to that woman, I would say to her, this feels scary because it is. You feel anxious because this is dangerous. And there are things that could help you. There are things that could help. And can you engage in them from a place of self-love rather than derision? You don't need to outperform this pain. You need to believe that you make sense and trust yourself to be enough to handle it. The challenge before us, the mental health, the health challenge before us is not to stop working, but rather to be present as humans with the full range of our humanity at work and beyond it, to move beyond the paradox of performance. We need to hold the complexity of human experience. We want to take up space meaningfully in our lives and the lives of those around us. We deserve to take up that space. Thank you out there for allowing me to take up space in your lives today. It's the kindest thing you could do for me. And my wish upon wish is that you extend the same privilege to yourself. Thank you, everyone. And thanks, Aaron, for having me.
Amazing, Kara. Thanks so much for joining us. And I can just see in the comments, just the number of people resonating with what you're saying. I feel like I'm glad we're recording, because I'm going to listen to what you just said, maybe once a month or something, to
Me
remind
too.
myself about some of these things, And I always find it interesting that, therapists often have therapists. That's just a fact. I think probably because they recognize the benefits of therapy. Like, even as someone, who advises on this, you still realize the benefits of that. And I'm just curious on your end, while we're here, like, what do you think is stopping a lot of lawyers or attorneys from seeking, I guess, help for their struggles? And when they come, like, is there regret they hadn't started earlier, or like, walk me through what that's often like?
Yeah, I love the question. And I think the thing that stops a lot of people is that tendency to outperform pain. We think that the answer is to work harder, stronger, longer. And if we can't do that, we're broken, right? And so admitting that we need help, let alone help from a professional, the internal narrative is like, ooh, I must be some kind of broken, right? It's that stigma. And so what I often find is that fit matters, right? I want you, when you go to a therapist, to feel like you're going to your stylist, like the person that cuts your hair. I want you to feel like they get you, that it's a good haircut. You leave feeling like yourself, and only you know that feeling. And for people that find a fit sooner, oftentimes it is regret. I wish I had figured this out earlier. For people that really have to pound the pavement looking for a fit, it takes longer. And sometimes it's not regret, but eventually therapy can help. Now, remember also, you're the expert on you, right? So therapy is not for everyone. There are books, there are walks, there are podcasts. You get to dive into the places that you know you need. Don't try and outperform your pain. Try and embrace it. Find a different way.
That's fantastic. And it's funny, on my end, the person who sort of, I'll call it, forced me into therapy, and I mean that in a good way, was my wife. She's like, you should try this. And I had this stigma, I think, in my head, like, oh, I don't need this, or I can figure it out myself. And I was just ending up ruminating on nonsense, which at the end of the day, like, I didn't have the skills to turn off my brain a bit or realize, okay, like, I literally was like, oh yeah, I'll just outthink this. The more I think about it, the more I'm going to solve my problem. And obviously, as you know, that's literally the opposite of what you want to do. You end up on these, dangerous spirals. And it's funny that in this profession, so many of us have trouble admitting we need help, when literally we're in the client service business of other people coming to us because they've realized they need help with a legal issue that in theory they could try to solve themselves, but they've realized, you know what, I don't have the skill set to solve that myself, or it's not efficient, or it's not going to get me where I want to. So they come to us instead of doing it themselves. And so often, I think, as lawyers, and especially the kind of work sometimes I do on the corporate side, especially with like early stage tech companies, for example, where I see them having tried to do it themselves and having, we'll call it, failed miserably. And then we spend so much more time and money trying to fix those issues, when if they had just come to us in the first place, it would have been faster, better, cheaper, better for everyone else. And yet we often don't apply that same logic to ourselves. Like, we're not experts in this at all. You happen to be both a lawyer and an expert in this, but the rest of us aren't. And I think the belief that, oh, we can solve these problems, maybe some of this stems from the fact that we're supposed to do sales ourselves, supposed to bring in clients, supposed to be everything as a lawyer, which doesn't make any sense. Well, we haven't been trained on this. And I just wonder, before you drop off here, like, what are some of those common themes that you keep hearing from your clients or people you speak with, where you're like, it's the same story over and over again? I don't mean that in a bad way, but I mean, like, it's the same, one or two or three common things you're hearing.
When I work with people who feel like the way to feel safe and connected in the world is to perform, like to meet and exceed expectations, the thing I hear again and again is, I don't have anything left to give, and the only tool I have is working harder. Right? So it's like what you said, like, I don't have anything left to give. I'm just going to spin in these thoughts. And this is the only way I know how to get my way out of this. And it's not getting me there. And so there's this thing where the qualities that make you successful, your critical thinking, your ability to see around corners, your care, your devotion, your dedication, your accessibility, your desire to produce, to contribute, all of those things that make you excellent as a lawyer, and frankly, as a high achieving professional, it makes it really hard for you to feel healthy. If that is the only tool in your toolbox, like me, And I had years of graduate school and training. My instinct was to push through. And when that is our only tool, we inevitably feel unwell, not because there's anything wrong with us, but because we can't take accountability without being empathetic. We're just punishing ourselves when we do that.
No, that's fantastic. I'm going to post a link in the chat to a podcast I'm a big fan of. It's called The Anxious Achiever. I don't know if you've ever
I
listened
love
to
The
that.
Anxious
Yeah.
Achiever. Moira, hook me up,
Yeah,
Moira.
exactly.
I want to come talk.
not sure we have that power yet. Maybe the second or third time we run the summit. But for those of you who haven't
Aaron,
heard it,
you do.
maybe we do. It's this podcast about all these high achieving people that are so incredibly impressive, and they're telling their real stories about their struggles. And again, this is not like, these are the people that are just like you and me, who are like, you think have it all figured out from the outside, and it's the complete opposite, of course, in reality. Kara, thanks again for joining us. Feel free to add to the comments how people can, reach out to you and all of that. We're going to take a quick break here. We're going to see if we can get Ben's audio issues figured out. If not, we'll make do here. But while we're on break, if you're hanging around here, let us know in the comments. You sent out some messages not too long ago to people about mental health. You checked in with somebody. Have any of you heard back yet from them? Let us know in the comments, either number one, if you've heard back and what they said, or number two, how it felt sending out that message. How did it feel for you, even if you haven't heard back yet? Was it a good feeling, not a great feeling? So we'll see you back here. We'll get started in about 4 minutes with the next talk, and let us know in the comments in the meantime. All right, everyone, welcome back. Great to see you in the comments. Some of you have already heard back from people you reached out to. Someone set up coffee already. Person was excited. It's fantastic to see, and it's a habit. I think we can all be better at. Myself definitely included. All right, we're gonna move over to Joe next. Joe's got a longer one like Gavin, and he knows Gavin quite well. Joe is a partner and the director of well-being at Quinn Emanuel, and he's a founder of the Lawyer Depression Project, which, as Joe will probably tell you, is maybe not the best name for that because it's so much more than just lawyers with depression. It's a nonprofit providing an online peer support community for legal professionals and not just lawyers. He'll tell you all about it, his journey there, and how you may want to get involved if you're listening and resonating with some of the other talks before, going, oh, wow, I could use a community. But that's what it's all about. Joe, over to you. Take it away from here.
Hey, thanks so much, Aaron. Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me, and thanks for all the wonderful speakers and all the people joining in. I'm going to share a little bit of my journey. I guess it starts in the beginning. As a kid, I always wondered, what's the point of it all? Why are we here? The existential type questions. And just growing up, I loved baseball and having fun, playing, that sort of stuff. I never thought I would be a lawyer or anything like that. I did well in math type courses, so went to engineering school. My guidance counselor said, "Oh, you did well at math. You should do engineering." I really had no idea. I thought maybe I'll do genetic engineering because that sounds interesting. I was reading like Brave New World, Aldous Huxley, and I thought genetic engineering, that sounds interesting. So I looked up the courses in the college where I was going, and I couldn't find genetic engineering, so I chose chemical engineering, which it sounded similar. But if you know anything about chemical engineering, you'll know it's nothing like genetic engineering. So I spent the next 4 years studying how water flows through pipes, and it was really tough, and it was really not what I thought I was getting into. But that was fine, and I kind of just pushed through it. And then one day I took a philosophy course as an elective, and I was like, "Oh, this is wonderful." I was so excited by philosophy, and I felt really in the moment, like in the flow, just full of joy learning about philosophy. So I decided I'd take another philosophy course. I looked up what courses are available, and I found jurisprudence, the philosophy of the law. And so I took the jurisprudence course, and I was like, this is also really wonderful. I love this too. And so I was like, okay, well, I spent these 4 years doing engineering. How the heck can I do philosophy with an engineering degree? So I started looking into options, and I found patent litigation. You can go and become a lawyer and still use your engineering degree. So I went and I went to law school. I went to Rutgers. It's a school in New Jersey. It's like probably second tier law school, and that's fine. It's all good. So then I went to a IP boutique, intellectual property boutique, and practiced patent litigation. And it was really not something that was exciting to me. It was not philosophy. It was not the philosophy of law. I was digging into the technical weeds of technology and trying to help one company assert patents against another company for infringing its intellectual property. And to me, it seemed like not a very fulfilling or meaningful job. And that's why I titled my talk "Man's Search for Meaning." It's my search for meaning in my life, and like, what's the point of it all? So September 11th happened. There was a lot of thoughts going through my mind, like, there's real stuff going on in the world, and here I am spending 10 to 12 hours a day doing something that's not really yeah, we got an engineer and patent litigator there in the comments. Hey, no disparagement meant. There's a lot of people who enjoy the job. And so I was just wondering, like, am I really going to spend the next 30 years in an office doing this, which wasn't really fulfilling for me. It wasn't very meaningful. Yeah, that's funny. Person in the comments did a ton of soul searching and then left. That's funny. So anyway, I ended up dealing with depression as a young associate doing patent litigation. And it's a long story. I won't share the whole story of what I was going through, basically exhaustion and ruminating on my thoughts and losing focus. And ultimately I decided I can't do this job. It's just making me sick. So I need to leave. At that point, I felt like everything was meaningless, like everything. I didn't want to associate with friends or family. And I just had like voices in my head that were over and over thinking negative thoughts, and I couldn't get them out of my head. So it was a very, very stressful period of time. And I ultimately went to a psychiatrist. I actually went to a regular doctor and was not diagnosed correctly originally, and ultimately wrote an email to a diabetes specialist and said, I'm going to quit my job. I can't do this anymore. It seems meaningless and it's making me sick. And I put in parentheses, but everything seems meaningless. And so he said, come in, you got to see a psychiatrist. And so that was a great turning point for me. I had no idea what psychiatrists were. I had no idea what therapists were, what depression was, anxiety. I went in and he checked the box off on all the symptoms of major depression, or many of the symptoms. And, I had lost weight. I was having panic attacks. It was just a terrible period of time. They gave me, prescribed me Lexapro, an antidepressant. I took that, and within a couple weeks, I stopped ruminating on my thoughts. And I felt like I was very much in the present moment. And for the next 10 years, maybe, I was very productive. I didn't dwell on things. I didn't ruminate. I started to see meaning in little things, like butterflies and birds, basic stuff, the beauty of trees and nature. And for a long time, I did my job, and there were periods of time where I enjoyed it and I was excited by it. And then there were periods of time where I would go through what I would call ruts, where I would become less focused and have no motivation, and would spend, a couple of weeks just really having a difficult time getting my work done. And then I would just work through it and I would get productive again. I would go through these cycles. I checked the box on the external markers of success, made partner at a big firm in New York City, did really well financially. My goal was always to, make enough money that I could help my family, because when growing up, my parents were always arguing about money and lack of. We grew up, we didn't have a lot of money, and they were always arguing about it. So I guess in my mind, I thought making a lot of money was the road to peace and bringing happiness to my family, which is not correct after all. My parents, I love them, but they still argue, and they'll probably argue all the way as long as they live. So all that to say, I also have suffered or dealt with depression as a partner. And I got to the point where I was like, again, I don't know why I'm doing this. What's the point of it all? I should just leave. I never really had a plan B. What else am I going to do? I can't do anything close to what I'm doing and make anywhere near close to the salary I'm making. So I felt kind of trapped in a job that would, how could I maintain the standard of living for my family and leave this job? That's all I really know how to do. So I went to see a therapist, and my therapist, Colin Jamron in Brooklyn, I always give him a shout out because he's awesome. And he helped me a lot in dealing with cognitive behavioral therapy type distorted thinking that was causing a lot of my low moods. And he helped me to find a path that would be more of a, like Ashley says in the comments, like a soul searching. I started to move from my head to my heart and started to try to follow my heart. I had a spiritual awakening experience where I had pulled nearly like 3 consecutive all-nighters working on a case, which was really stupid. But a colleague I was working with, I had learned that he had just been diagnosed with a heart condition, and we had a deadline to meet. And so I didn't want him to have to stay up late, but we had to get it done because of a court deadline. So I stayed up for like these 3 days. And then at the end of it, I like lost the ability to think as I was going through an airport. And I didn't know what was going on. Sort of lost touch with reality. And when I awoke from my sleep on the plane, I felt like I was connected to everything. So it was like a spiritual experience where I felt like I was connected to a higher intelligence. And so this changed everything for me because I grew up very like scientific based. Like I didn't know if there was a God, and I was okay with that because I just didn't know. But like now I'm a firm believer in this reality is not all there is. You know, there is a place, whether it's a state of mind of like connection between everything. So I've gotten onto the spiritual path of that really is a shift from the head and being motivated by fear to the heart. And being in the heart, I'm motivated more by love and values, and also the idea of sort of surrendering to this higher intelligence. So like when I'm afraid of things, I'll write down in my journal the fears I have, and then I give them to my higher power or my inner teacher. And I try to do, meditation. I still my mind. I listen for guidance. And so all of this to say that my spiritual path has largely contributed to where I am now, which is I'm now sort of becoming the director of well-being at my law firm, which I find much more meaningful than the patent litigation work. I co-founded a nonprofit that is called the Lawyers Depression Project. It's lawyersdepressionproject.org. Gavin mentioned it earlier. He is our DEI chair and one of our leaders. And we provide peer support online for legal professionals, not just lawyers. All around the world, our members are nearly 1,000 now. And it's just a safe space, very beautiful place for people to come together and just listen to each other, just share. And you have the option of being anonymous within the group. So it's really great, and there's a lot of real beauty in connection. And as a spiritual person, when I witness our talks, these meetings, I feel like there's more than just the people there connecting to each other. There are, like, I can't count the number of times where someone came on with a particular issue, feeling like they were all alone, and then there would be someone else on the call who had some similar issue and is at a different phase of it, and they were able to mutually support themselves based upon their stories. So it's all very beautiful. I've enjoyed that very much. I've enjoyed being part of this mental health movement. I will say that from my own perspective, and for whatever it's worth, I feel more comfortable talking about my experience with depression than I do with talking about my spiritual beliefs. But my spiritual beliefs are that we are actually, in our true reality, one with a higher intelligence that created us, and that we're here experiencing a separation, the idea of separation from that higher intelligence, and that when we think things, we think fearful thoughts. Those thoughts manifest in this reality. They are projections of our mind, and they are opportunities for healing. Each time you have a thought about, like, I'm not good enough, you'll have a circumstance that'll arise that will allow you to experience that feeling of not being good enough, and it'll be an opportunity for you to heal that belief. Because ultimately, this life is a classroom where we're learning that we are perfect, we are eternal, we are infinite, and we're basically pure love. And it's a beautiful process. And so I'm trying to surrender to that higher intelligence. And I'm personally loving this spiritual journey in sort of letting go of control and trusting this higher intelligence. And, you know, it's difficult to talk about because I never want to make people feel uncomfortable, but it's my path. So it's, I guess that's what I wanted to share today. Hey, Aaron.
Joe, I want to share my screen quickly because, you know, we don't, this is not a, you know, event where it's all about promoting people, but the work you're doing is amazing. It's completely free. And so I just want to quickly share my screen here. So this is the Lawyers Depression Project. And as I mentioned, and Joe, I think you alluded to, this is not just depression. It's a group of legal professionals, so not just lawyers, who suffered from all sorts of stuff that we know are real issues in this profession: depression, anxiety, you know, all sorts of other stuff going on that may or may not be related to law, might just be personal. They're doing some amazing stuff. There's all these member benefits and things like that. And you're probably thinking, yeah, but how much do I have to pay? And Joe, you and I both know the answer. This is literally completely free, right? You have the option to be anonymous, 24/7 chat access, confidential forum, bi-monthly online peer support meetings. You're providing this incredible resource that I think is so important. And it's one thing that in a lot of the work I do, let me just move back here. A lot of the work I do, you know, with For All Academy, which is the substantive training I do, and we do a lot of, you know, some paid stuff, but we do a lot of free stuff. I was speaking to a group of first-year law students last night. We're running a course, you know, 2 weeks ago with a bunch of first-year associates. There's this overarching belief that everyone is the only person feeling the way they do, even though everyone is feeling that way. All the first-year law students, they're the only ones who don't have it figured out because everyone feels so composed. That first-year associate feels like they're the only one who's dumb, who doesn't know, you know, how an M&A deal works, when you didn't learn that in law school and no one's really taught you it. I think the fact that you're doing something so community-based, focused, and free, similar to the event we're doing here, is like helping people realize not only are they not alone, but there's a group of people that feel like them, who they can join and who can identify with their experiences. Because I think being in this profession, it's sometimes hard for the average person to understand what it's like to have some of these pressures. You know, when people are like, well, can't you just work less? What do you mean you have to drop everything? Like, and you get it, right? Like, you're a practicing lawyer at the same time. Joe, what surprises, I guess, quickly, you know, people the most when they join, or you know, like, what are they grateful for? They go like, why didn't I do this sooner? You know, what are you often hearing?
Well, you know, it's different for everyone, but I think that, you know, the people actually look forward to the meetings, and it's a break from their day where they have something they look forward to each week. You know, we're all at different stages, right? So there's people who are dealing with a mental health issue and they're isolated and they're not connecting. But to have a place where you can come and you can speak authentically and know that you're not going to be judged, and just to let it out is really can be really cathartic and can be really powerful. And so there's just so many beautiful benefits in connecting. And, you know, a lot of people are afraid to connect. So we have a lot of members who have never come on a call, and we're trying to think of ways how to encourage people, but we're all at different points on our paths, right? And when when their time is right, they'll come, or, maybe they don't. Maybe peer support's not what they need. Maybe they need therapy, maybe they need to get back in touch with their heart. And that's where I want to close, my comments with the message, at least to everyone listening. And it's really a message to myself as well. And that is, there's no case or project that you'll ever work on that is more important than yourself. So prioritize yourself, take care of yourself. And I firmly believe that all of the answers that you're seeking are in your heart. So that's why a lot of people say do meditation, because and there are a lot of the speakers already talked about the power of awareness and watching your thoughts. It's because if you watch your thoughts and you let them go and you try to get into silence and still yourself, you can hear, or you can listen to your heart. Your heart is actually a place of knowledge. There is a thing called like heart knowing. And so that intuition that you feel, that gut, that's a real thing. And I think it's a connection, at least in my view, to a very, very powerful source. And that, so I feel very positive about where things are headed. I feel like, society is experiencing a collective awakening to what we truly are. And you see that with a lot of different authenticity movements, like the Me Too movement, Black Lives Matter, LGBTQ plus. All these movements, in some sense, share the being more authentic, being more, peeling off layers of the ego. These little stories that we tell about ourselves, these limiting beliefs that we have about ourselves, we're peeling the onion until we get right down to it. And we are remarkably powerful, beautiful, spiritual entities underneath it all. And so I'm excited to watch the unfolding.
Amazing. Joe, thank you so much for joining us today, for, embracing that authenticity and for being someone who I think, is practicing what they preach. And I'm so excited to see your journey as you progress in your, I guess, legal career or next stages of the legal career, doing the stuff that's more fulfilling, watching you and Gavin, drive some amazing change and help so many people. Again, highly encourage anyone here to check out the Lawyer Depression Project, share it with someone who might be struggling. Incredible resource, completely free, and truly out of the goodness of Joe and others' hearts to really help people not feel, I think, the way they did, the way I felt, or I felt like I was the only one feeling this way, and where I wasn't comfortable in the past being authentic. And as Joe said, we're all at our own stages. I'm a lot further along than I was 5 years ago, and I'm sure 5 years from now it'll be a whole different place. But there are resources out there, whether it's at your firm, whether it's in these peer support groups, whether it's individual therapy, whatever it is. And in some cases, that may involve leaving the legal profession or your certain existing environment altogether. In other cases, there's tons of ways that you can work on yourself at the same time as you figure out what's right for you. And as Joe said, the answer usually is in your heart, even though as lawyers we're trained to believe it's up here. So Joe, thank you so much. Dowell, come join me up here. We've got a systemic challenge kind of on our way because we know that at the end of the day, a lot of these issues are systemic. Dowell, over to you, but take it away.
Yeah, I mean, every single talk we've heard today all kind of points to the idea that it starts with us, awareness with us, taking charge ourselves, giving ourselves compassion, love, acceptance, all of those things. But let's face the facts. There are systemic issues here at play. And I think that's the reason why this event is just so much more than people talking. It's time for us to actually take action, to actually, put our energy, put our passion, put our drive here to good use and actually change things systematically. And so, we have a very simple ask for all of you today. I'm going to share my screen again, but we'd like to know exactly what does your organization say? And you could be coming from a law firm, maybe a law school, maybe a legal department. What are they actually saying publicly about the state of mental health and well-being? And I'd really like to contrast that with what your actual lived experience is like. Is it the same? How about your colleagues? Are they actually saying the same things? Externally, you're getting all these awards, mental health champion, this, that, or the other. The firm is getting all these accolades. But what's it like on the ground? What's the reality actually like? And I'd really like us to try and figure that out. And then what we want to do is take a lot of this feedback that you have and ask these organizations to say, admit the real situation. And so the last question on here is, what do you wish your organization would admit about what the actual ground reality is? And I think if we can get these three pieces sort of floating out there, and we go to the leaders of these organizations and say, hey, here's what you say, here's the actual reality, and here's what your people want you to admit. So we can take actual proactive steps to address it instead of just giving lip service to it at every single occasion. I think that's when real change, real systemic change can actually happen. And so Aaron, I don't know if you have anything to sort of
Yeah,
add
I'll
to
expand
that.
on that in a sec, but Del, why don't you toss those links into the chat so people can start filling it out, and then I'll share a little bit more about the backstory here.
So you can get the link to it. I'm gonna share a very simple link for those of us joining in. If you go on authenticlawyersummit.com/mental health, and I'm putting it up right now, there's a link called Challenge, and I want you to click on that. So I'm putting it right here on the screen for those of us watching the recording. That's the link. Put it up there, and when you click on that, you will see Challenge. I want you to click on the Challenge button. It will take you to a Google form. The Google form is what we're trying to work with here, and I'll put the link directly to the Google form as well if you want to click on that directly, but this is for those of us just watching the recording later on. So click on this. It's going to ask you a bunch of questions, and I'd like you to actually name your firm. By the way, this is completely anonymous. Nothing that you're sharing is going to be shared with us. Your name isn't shared with us. We just want to actually figure out the ground reality. So I think that's the intent here. Aaron, back to you.
Yeah, so let's take a moment or two just for you to spend a couple minutes filling out that form. So we'll stop talking now. If you're clicking on that link Dal will send, just click on Challenge, which is in red right below mental health. That's where you'll find the Google form. We'll be back to tell you a little bit more about what we have in mind momentarily, and then we'll get into the last part of this segment of the summit. And if you're a sole practitioner, which is a great point, like Emma is saying, think about a prior organization you've worked in, or maybe your law school, or things you're hearing from friends. It's a great point if you're a sole practitioner. Hopefully, you've got no one else to blame or talk to. That's a great point on your end.
For those of us leaving, stick around. There's one more portion left in this event, so don't hang out. Just don't leave just yet. We got something more planned for you in just a moment, but take a couple more minutes, fill out this form if you would like, and we'll be back in just a couple of seconds.
So as the responses come in, we're not going to share them publicly here, but I'll just walk you through some of the key comments we're seeing that are probably not going to surprise you. So pretty much every person, other than those who are currently working for themselves, is saying either that their firm is saying absolutely nothing about mental health, or that that it's really important, it's a priority, all of those kind of things. People's actual experiences on the ground, different story. Someone said support's almost non-existent. It's anywhere from not great to really bad, which is a scale nobody wants to be on. Someone says desperately bad, and resource concerns trump mental health every single day. So, lack of associates, lack of whatever to do the legal work. Yes, we care about mental health, but there's work to be done, and the work to be done, takes priority. We've got a Canadian here, I assume, that's saying they send emails around Bell Let's Talk Day, which is a once a year kind of promotional campaign for Bell, guys as caring about mental health that I think many might argue is all about profits, and they promote EAP, right? It's like, here you go, we care about these things. They provide access to counseling and EAP, but they too many meetings, so many things scheduled that people end up working after hours pretty much consistently. So yes, we care about it sort of, and here's some resources, but the day-to-day reality doesn't reflect that. Someone says everyone is stressed and overworked. Someone says it's awful, and they've got a whole long list of things that, man, it's not great. If you raise this fact, when people speak up, bad things happen, so now no one speaks up. You name it. And what do people want to hear their organizations admit? That burnout, anxiety, depression is real. It's untenable and dangerous, the current situation. We want people to be honest and more attention, so on and so forth. So here's really where we're heading with this. As we mentioned, I think when we promoted the summit, and we truly mean this, this event to us today is not about you hearing talks and going to join the Lawyer Depression Project. If you do that because you feel like it's a great resource, I'm happy. That makes me happy. That'll make Joe happy. Not because anyone's making money from it, but because it means that we made at least a partial difference for somebody today, right? If someone goes to get therapy, goes to EAP, again, we've made a small difference, and that's great. But at the end of the day, that's a Band-Aid solution, right, for what is very clearly a systemic issue. And so after this event, we've got lots of ideas we're going to be working on the systemic side, because if we're not making changes at the top of organizations, it's left to everybody to fend for themselves, to join peer support groups, to go to therapy, when at the end of the day, these are systemic challenges coupled with some stuff individually. So one of the initiatives we're likely going to be working on is a kind of thing where we apply a little bit of pressure to firms or organizations, say, hey, for example, here's one statement we want you to make publicly. And it could be as simple as mental health is a problem for employees and lawyers at our firm or our organization. And that's the kind of thing that so many organizations are afraid to say, because that means admitting imperfections, admitting failure. But it also means being authentic. And there's a power, as we know, and we've heard today from all our speakers, in authenticity. So lots more to come from this. Your responses, again, they're anonymous, but really helpful on our end as we figure out next steps. And we'll let you know what we're working on, because there's so many things we want to do to drive systemic change. Dowell, if you want to join me here, perfect. So we're done the talks part of the summit. We want to make sure things get even more interactive, because we've got so many amazing people in the audience here. I know many people couldn't make it, and they're going to watch the recordings after, but we've got a great group of people here live. So Dowell, what's next, and how do we keep these conversations going, get to meet more people, and talk more about our experiences other than just in the comments?
Yeah. This is not, even though we're doing this entire event virtually, I think the interactions that we're getting, the stories that we're hearing right now are so genuine. They feel so real. And I think the comments have really been a testament to that. Everyone's just been saying, this is so real, so raw. And we now want to turn it over to you. We want all of us to have those raw conversations ourselves. And so we're going to use a different platform. We're not going to do another Zoom call. We're not going to do these forced networking interactions where everyone says, how are you doing? Any of that kind of stuff. We're going to use a platform called Gather Around. And on Gather Around, you're going to be randomly assigned in these little groups. And we have created questions for you to talk about. Questions that get at the heart of your mental health. How are you feeling? What techniques, what rituals, what habits, what's been your story, your journey, your experiences with mental health? How do you keep yourself afloat? How do you get yourself to thrive? Because I think the more of these conversations we have internally amongst ourselves, the more we normalize this, the easier and easier it gets to create the systemic change we're talking about, but also to improve our own well-being. Like, that is so important. So Once again, if you go into the link that you see below me, the authenticlawyersummit.com/mental health, you will see a link called Conversations That Matter. And when you click on that, you'll be taken to Gather Around. And on Gather Around, you're going to have these conversations. It's all pre-scripted for you. Everything is timed right, so no one can take over a conversation. If you're talking, you get a certain amount of time, the other person gets a certain amount of time. You're all going to be matched evenly. Everyone gets their moment in the spotlight, so to speak, and we all get to share our collective wisdom. So go ahead, click on that right now, and we will see you in the Conversations That Matter. We'll see you on Gather Around. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thanks so much for joining us, and enjoy the last part of the summit. I'm so excited for you to have some of these conversations to share with people, and there's no pressure to share anything you don't want to share. So an amazing way to meet some people, to build that network, but also to keep these conversations going with like-minded people. So head on over there if you haven't already, and we'll see you there soon. It's if you need to take a break, you're going to miss a little bit of it, but you can join in 5 minutes if you need to. But we really suggest you head on over there right now. And to all our speakers, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Take care, everybody.